Europeans, who we call white people, they never forget. They never forget. So at the time, we had 4 empires from the Umayyad to the Almohad dynasty. One of the things that led to the conditions of the fall was us fighting against each other. So these empires rise so mighty that they became more powerful than the people who dispatched them from North Africa, just like America with Britain. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So after a long bout of fighting against each other, the Europeans, the popes of Rome, Pope Philip II, Pope Philip I, the III, they never forget to remove this culture. They keep that in the kids' mind, they keep that in the women's mind, that we got to expel the Moors. So through the infighting, they found little fissures to come in to break it down. So you get Granada, the last little kingdom that the Moors ran.
Now, is it a connection with that in that medieval time that we touched on in the volume 1 session, and getting into the medieval period of time, and then also connecting with that the Renaissance, that period of time, just to make those connections so people will really understand when we start talking about Moors in the geography, for one, to let them know a lot of connections with what they call Negro. With the Moors, to let you know that the Moors were black.
The Moors were black.
And a lot of people will make the connection and they'll assume that they were Arabic.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things we got to dispel too, because we're talking about 1568, where they started to take the name of the Moors and started to call them Negroes, Moriscos, blacks, these little terminologies to denote pejorative terms, you know what I'm saying? So you start to get in the 1500s, after the fall, remnants of Moors living here and there, and then you get the stigmatization of the Moors are ugly, the Moors culture is this, that, and the third, the culture war.
Yeah, but we were bringing culture to
but this
to
is
the
after,
Europeans.
But this is after the long fall. If you ever watched the movie called Black Knight with Martin, if you notice, every time he called him a Moor, he would say it with such disdain. When you talk about a time period where they resented us after being there for so long. So whenever he talked to Martin, he would say, Moor, you filthy Moor. He's there at a time period when our reputation started to fall and started to wane, and our power and our influence started to fall. At this point, North Africa is not really rocking with us like that, because a lot of people became heavily Christian because it was a culture war. They was trying to get that back. And we're talking about the Christian Crusades here. So the main thing about it is the Inquisition. They call it the Spanish Inquisition. You got to look at the Inquisition as we look at the FBI, to inquire, to bust
That's when it got bloody.
Exactly. To infiltrate, to make sure that Islam was never practiced. So when they caught the Moors practicing Christianity, they would torture them and kill them. They called it autos.
Yeah, that's when we get into the guillotines and all of that.
But that's the medieval time period with the burning and the lynching and the drowning. But it came out of the autos. It came out of the garut, which means to slaughter, the Moors. So everything that they saw that was not in harmony with their culture, they looked at it as treachery. They looked at it as fractious, you know.
One thing I want people to get from these discussions is one, to get out of the victim mentality that's being perpetuated. A lot of times we see ourselves as historically, when we were in school, docile, lazy, that we didn't fight back, that we didn't have this rich history or this rich culture. And as time progressed, we started learning about ancient Kemet, and we started making those connections, but we never really delved into really understanding the culture in the black people that we call the Moors. Yeah. And then also to make a connection why it's important for us to have this conversation and how it relates to blacks or African Americans here in the modern time. So you want to touch on those relationships between the importance of the historical Moors and building up to the politics and the reign and the downfall, and why it's important for us as black people here in modern times.
Well, you can't even understand history if you're studying Kemet, you studying the kingdoms of West Africa. You get nowhere if you don't study the medieval time period, because this is where all the politics. This is where you get the doctrine of discovery with the Inca Terra Divina, the Roman pontifex, and the dumb diverses to expel the Moors. They call them Saracens, they call them Turks, all of these different names. Berbers, the same people. As a matter of fact, in Christmas Eve, 1568, it was the biggest, bloodiest fight that we had with them, when 20,000 Moors from North Africa was dispatched to fight in the Al-Pujara area against 26,000 Christians. The biggest, bloodiest battle that happened was when North Africa came and the Turks came to help the Moriscos, which are Moors, fight against these people.
Yeah, and that's the importance, man, because I want to, even now you got my brain moving to where, and I know this is a little off topic, from the Moors, pretty soon we're going to have to get into the Maroons.
Yeah.
And start talking about those revolts. Yeah. Making those connections.
Yeah.
So we as black people, when we hear this, we start to feel that sense of pride in making that connection.
Yeah.
And knowing that, people always like to say, "Oh, we were kings and queens." Here, which,
but it's a dark side.
But to understand, to get out of the victim mentality here, in the West, in the Western philosophy that we've adopted, and really understanding and having appreciation for the rich history that came prior, because a lot of people in history, man, they really kind of X out the Moors. A lot of times it's not going to be in the textbooks when you talk about it. Like we said, 16th century, and you get it with into William Shakespeare and writing about Othello, and then I can't remember what year when Paul Robeson played the lead to let people know, oh yeah, the Moors were black, and then it gets into the poetry and that influence that it had, and even with how Chancellor Williams, the historian Chancellor Williams, describing the Moors, and just putting it in people's head that when I say Moor, I mean black.
We're talking
dark
about
skin.
who we call black people today. Just to really talk about it, we're just going to keep it all the way 100. The European Freemason wanted to make sure that this history never got told. Because if we understood the history behind the Moors, then we'll understand the route that they're running now. All the games from segregation to redlining, it happened in these areas first. So you talk about 1492 to 1600, the same operation was happening then, happened now. Now, when Granada fell, because we last left off on Granada falling, the burning the boats, slaughtering the Moors. Now you have Moors in interstices and the hinterlands, living away and living off. The reason why this was dangerous and to be segregated is because every time it was social unease, whenever some catastrophic events or a pandemic or the plague happened, who they were blaming on? The Moors. Kind of like they do here. It was like the punching bags. So you're the reason why this happened. It made them easier targets. So after a while, constantly, you brew up this resentment between both parties. So the Europeans developed a psychological conditioning to see that everything that was outside of their culture as a threat after a while.
Now, did you want to touch on this history, delving into what we'll call the West, and siphoning into America, making those treks that 16th, the 15th, all the way through the 17th century, and then the influence and coming into the West, and now us as quote unquote modern black people in America, and that influence, how that influence carried on to have a, would you call it a resurgence?
Yeah, I would call it a resurgence. The biggest link to this whole operation is at the same time you're seeing the Moors go down in 1568, 1548 in Spain, Granada, which is Europe. You see the same slaughtering going on in the Yucatan in Mexico with the Aztecs. They were putting Aztecs' heads on the swivel for practicing Moorish science. Moorish science being alchemy, geometry, poetry, astrology, anything that they deemed spooky. Because at this time, Spain went over to the Yucatan, Mexico. They came before Columbus, Ivan Van Sertima. Wrote about the exchange between the Moors and the so-called Indians.
If you're watching this on YouTube, man, hey, y'all, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. This is Gentleman's History Hour.